Starting off this countdown at number 10, the Cody Road Bridge. The Cody Road Bridge in northern Kentucky is a railroad bridge that runs over Cody Road, right at the point where a creek runs under the road. So you have the bridge running above you, and the road dips somewhat below it. With the creek and low road, this area is prone to flooding when the creek rises. Flooding here is such a common occurrence that swinging gates have been permanently placed on either side of the creek, marked with stop signs to be closed whenever the water starts to rise. The legends of this area revolve around a woman that passed away in one of the following ways, depending on who you ask. The first one is by taking her own life, either by jumping in front of an oncoming train on the bridge or by jumping from the bridge. The second one is running for help from her burning home that was near the bridge, but got hit by a train in the process. And the last one is getting caught in the current when the road quickly flooded below the bridge, either while in her car or while walking. Reports from this area are often of a woman in white walking the bridge, sometimes crying. Others say yelling for help. Orbs, phantom trains, and disembodied voices are also reported here. Some locals refer to the phantom as pig face, supposedly referring to her injuries after going head to head with the train. Now on to number 9, Narrows Road. Narrows Road in Engler, Kentucky is supposedly where a ghostly police officer likes to hang out. According to urban legend, while making a traffic stop here sometime in the 50s, he was struck and passed away by a passing car. So now, if you drive along Narrows Road after midnight, or at exactly midnight in some tellings, a 1950s style police cruiser will appear and pull you over. Some versions of the legend say the officer will then come to your car, speak to you, then disappear after walking away, while others say he disappears before even reaching you. Number 8, Hillbilly Beast. In the back hills of eastern Kentucky near the Ohio River, something stalks through the trees. Many locals believe that the mysterious creature is the Hillbilly Beast of Kentucky, a Bigfoot-like entity. This creature is said to be gigantic and hairy, smells horrid, glides when it runs, and has yellow eyes and a ferocious howl. Reports of this terrifying monster date back to the days of Daniel Boone, but increasing encounters provided enough interest that History's channel Monster Quest featured the Hillbilly Beast in an episode aired on their 4th season. Number 7, Hot Rod Haven. The place known to local folks as Hot Rod Haven is actually a stretch of Mitchell Hill Road. During the period between the 1940s and the 1970s, the road was a popular spot for teenagers to test not only their racing skills but their bravery as well. However, many of them did not come back from the road alive. Mitchell Hill Road is a winding and twisting road that, over time, has reportedly claimed the lives of more than 25 people in the area. As the driver travels down the hill, they come out of the curves into a short straightaway that abruptly switches back into a banking left turn. Prior to reaching the turn, cars were able to reach very high speeds, which often results in tragedy. Legend has it that a young woman and her date were on their way to a dance on the night of September 23, 1950, when they crashed at the bottom of the hill and passed away. Since that time, reports claim that the girl has been seen wandering the roadway and aimlessly strolling the cemetery at the top of the hill. It was here that she was buried side by side with her young lover. The cemetery at the top of the road is a private burial ground for several local families, most notably the Mitchell and Griffin families. Over the years, the ghostly girl has been dubbed both Sarah and Mary by those who've seen the apparition on the road at night. Number 6, the Hopkinsville Goblins. The Hopkinsville Goblins can also be known as the Little Kelly Green Men. This urban legend came directly from a pair of grandparents who live in Oak Grove and wanted to share the legend. Apparently, there was an alien invasion back in the 1950s. A family had reported that they had encountered little green men that they had been battling. The town did what any responsible town does and decided to host a festival in honor of these guys called Kelly Little Green Men Days Festival. Halfway, number 5, the Poplik Monster. Outside of Louisville on Poplik Creek, a rickety bridge crosses the water. But beware before you step on it. You may become the next victim of the Poplik Monster. Numerous urban legends exist about this creature's origins and the methods that it employs to claim its victims. According to some accounts, this creature uses either hypnosis or voice mimicry to lure trespassers onto a bridge to meet their end before an oncoming train. Other stories claim the monster jumps down from the bridge onto the roofs of cars passing beneath it. Yet other legends say it attacks its victims with a blood-stained axe, and that the very sight of the creature is so unsettling that those who see it while walking across the high bridge are driven to leap off and take their own life. Whether it's the work of a monster or just due to unfortunate accidents, there's no denying that this is a pretty scary legend. Number 4, Sleepy Hollow Road. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, you have to agree that calling anything Sleepy Hollow is a surefire way to end it with something spooky on your hands. Sleepy Hollow Road, located outside of Prospect, is home to a few urban legends, but I'm just gonna talk about the main one. The Louisville Ghost Hunter Society had investigated a trio of tall tales that took place along Sleepy Hollow Road near Prospect in Louisville. It said that a black hearse appears out of nowhere, speeds up, and causes drivers to run off the road and crash into a ravine 30 feet below. Cries and screams have been heard under what used to be a covered bridge, called Crybaby Bridge, while settlement women went to allegedly toss their unwanted or sickly children that they couldn't or didn't want to care for. And during the 1970s and 1980s, it is rumored that satanic rituals were performed at Devil's Point. Number 3. The Allendale Train Tunnel. The Allendale Train Tunnel is located south of Cincinnati in the woods behind the Allendale Trailer Park in Ellesmere, Kentucky. Years ago, legend says that a man hung himself from a hook that is set above the tunnel entrance and that his ghost is said to walk the tunnel, or some say appears still hanging from the hook. There are also reports of disembodied voices, as well as screams coming from inside the tunnel. There is sometimes confusion with finding it because it's known as a train tunnel but no trains run through it. It's actually a tunnel for the stream that runs under the tracks. To reach it, you must enter through the woods, travel down a hill, and follow the stream to reach the creepy location that's covered in spray paint and littered.
Check that out there. And I'm thinking that's one of the hooks. Looks like it got broke. Yeah, it's definitely one of the hooks there. So if someone did hang themselves, why would?
Number 2. The Headless Woman. If you go to Louisville's 739-acre Iroquois Park in the middle of the night, you might spot a ghastly apparition. People who live in Kentucky have said to have heard about the Headless Horseman growing up, but not the Headless Woman of Kentucky. According to the legend, she can be found in Iroquois Park in Louisville. The story is told that a farmer's wife was alone while her husband was away on work and her home was attacked by an Indian tribe, and it's said that they took the life of her and her dog. The legend is that she can be seen after dark just as a thick fog rolls in, roaming the grounds and holding her head. Now coming in at number 1, the Witch Girl of Pilot's Knob. Just looking at the pictures of young Mary Evelyn Ford's grave feels a bit unnerving, with a series of interlocking white crosses forming a fence around a pit of gravel and the bars appearing unnaturally bent in some places. Then you hear the alleged backstory. A mother and daughter both accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake in 1916, with the mother's charred remains being carried to a far-off location while the daughter was buried in a steel-lined coffin covered in stone and encased in crosses to prevent her escape. Some have claimed to witness tiny footprints appearing in the gravel, or even a young ghostly figure trying to escape the gravesite. Kid ghosts, as we know, are the creepiest ghosts, no doubt.
At number 10 spot, we have the Haunted Igloo Hotel. Located in Cantwell, Alaska, is one of the most unique hotels you'll ever see. However, can we call it a hotel if it's never officially been opened up to people? I guess not. Well, sometime in the 1970s, a man named Leon Smith began the construction of this building. His original plan was to make it a never-before-seen hotel, but over the years, it never managed to open due to various code violations. For example, they had undersized windows, which didn't even meet the requirement of the state. And in the end, the building was too big to demolish, so it just stood there for the next 4 decades. Now, apart from this hotel looking pretty eerie, what makes it so scary? Well, because this is an area notorious for grizzly bear attacks, and many have been reported in the area surrounding the hotel. But what makes many stray far, far away is that some have said they saw a woman in white who haunts the ruins. She can be seen looking out of the windows and sometimes by the entrance. At our number 9 spot, we have the Baggage Towers. Before you arrive in Whittier, Alaska, you must go through a long, narrow tunnel, and when you get out, the place already has this creepy atmosphere. However, as you drive down this town, one building may stand out to you, and that's the Baggage Towers. At one point, this building held the entire population of the city, all while being used for other public facilities such as stores and even churches. They eventually gave it the nickname, the town under one roof, and it just makes sense. With everyone in the town being under the same roof, it was bound to happen that some restless spirits stayed in the building as well. And at one point, residents of the building reported a strange, dark, shadowy figure walking and even crawling around the hallways late at night. In the rooms, they would hear strange voices coming from dark places telling them just to come closer. And one notorious spirit that most residents know is the man that could be heard whistling across the building. Now locals claim that it's even worse when snowfall hits because it just forces them to stay trapped inside of this supposed haunted building. At number 8 spot, we have Badarka Road. Many say this road exists while others claim it was completely made up, but what could be true is the terrifying stories attached to this road. Apparently located in Chudjik is a road known to be haunted by a man and his young daughter. This is all because they lost their lives on this road and have never been put to rest. Story goes that a man and his 5-year-old daughter decided to drive down this stretch of road in order to gather firewood for their cabin that was nearby. When they stopped, the father grabbed his axe and proceeded to chop down a tree. When he was on to his next tree, he wanted a small break, so he kept his axe lodged into the tree. However, when he turned his back, his daughter wanted to impress him and she took out the axe, which caused the entire tree to fall on top of her, killing her instantly. The father was so distraught and just sat there with her lifeless body until he passed away from hypothermia. Now, if you happen to find this road and drive down it around 3 a.m., you may catch the father holding his bloody daughter asking for a ride. At number 7 spot, we have Chased by a UFO. On November 17th, 1986, Japan Airlines cargo flight 1628 was making a trip from Paris all the way to Narita, which is really close by to Tokyo, Japan. It was a pretty normal flight until they made it over eastern Alaska. This is when the crew began to spot 2 unidentified flying objects close by to their left side. They described the aircrafts having 2 rectangular arrays, which is probably their thrusters. And when these aircrafts got too close, the pilots of the Japan flight noted that they could feel the heat on their face. One of the aircrafts appeared to be twice the size of the cargo flight, and they said it kind of looked like a mothership of some sort. The pilots tried to do evasive maneuvers in order to avoid these UFOs, but they still continued their pursuit for little under an hour. Once the 2 aircrafts left the plane alone, a third one came out of nowhere and began to trail them. The pilots decided to contact air traffic control to identify the aircraft, but nothing could be distinguished. After the end of the 3-month investigation, they concluded that there wasn't enough material for proof, although they'd accepted the descriptions that the crew had left them. So this still remains unsolved, but who knows what the crew actually saw. At our number 6 spot, we have Scary Mary. One of the most famous legends told to many Alaskans is the story of Scary Mary. The story begins in the height of the Klondike Gold Rush, which occurred between 1896 to 1899. One day, a young beautiful woman named Mary came to the Golden North Hotel in Skagway with her fiance. They loved each other, and by the first day in the hotel, they had already made plans to marry one another. So the fiance decided to go off and get a fortune in the gold fields. However, as time went by, the man never ended up returning. Throughout this whole time, Mary was patiently waiting for his arrival back at the hotel. But at one point, she decided to lock herself in the room, knowing her fiance was probably never going to return. After another week, the hotel keepers decided to break down her door, only to find her deceased body while wearing a wedding dress that was meant for her wedding day. Now visitors tell us that she hasn't ever checked out at the hotel. People walking outside claim to see a pale figure wearing a wedding dress looking outside of the windows, while others claim to see her on the ceilings looking down at them when they're sleeping. In the hump of our list, we have the Eldred Rock Lighthouse. Right off of Alaska's coastline is a small island notorious for the disasters that happened around it. This is the Eldred Rock Lighthouse in Haines area, Alaska. The lighthouse stood strong for over 100 years, but it has been haunted ever since its construction. During the 1896 gold rush, many steamboats were bringing gold miners across the body of water that surrounds the lighthouse, and unfortunately, many of these ships didn't survive the journey. The most famous wreck was during February 1898, when the steamship named the Clara Nevada hit the rock with as many as 75 lives being lost. Ever since that disaster, the island has been haunted by the souls of the Clara Nevada. All the lighthouse keepers report the feeling of being watched when they go out on a nighttime walk, and some have even claimed to see shadowy figures peeking out of the water near the coastlines. At number 4 spot, we have University of Alaska Poltergeist. The University of Alaska's Wendy William Auditorium seems to be a notorious place on campus for having a few of their own poltergeists. One of these being John Wendell Wendy Williamson himself. He was a former music professor who used to teach at the school, and students and staff members nowadays claim his spirit still lives in the room, since a lot of overnight staff will catch music being played in the auditorium only to find out that no one is in the whole hall. Psychics and other paranormal investigators have gone to the auditorium and said there are 5 other entities inside. These include a shadowy man seen in the backstage, an aggressive man who picks on brunettes, a teenage guy who is very welcoming, and a white lady who used to be a former student, and alongside a little girl that can be heard giggling during the lectures. Just imagine, you pay thousands of dollars to go to school only to be haunted by a family of ghosts. At number 3 spot, we have the Kuala Palik. The legend of the Kuala Palik comes from the Inuit people and their icy Arctic waters. They're actually somewhat considered mermaids, but unlike any other regular mermaid, there is nothing attractive about this creature. These creatures are often depicted as having fins that jut out of their heads, backs and arms, and their webbed feet and hands are topped with long sharp claws, All of this is enough to strike tears into the hearts of the children that the Kuala Palik preys upon. Only these children will catch a glimpse of their face, which resembles a woman's face that has turned green and bloated from rotting and being under the sea for a long time. Those who have sighted this creature report that they can only be seen for an instant before they are completely gone, but the children victims of this creature would not be so lucky. Their ways of killing involve leaping out of the water, sinking their sharp claws into your flesh, and dragging you into the water to drown you. At number 2 spot, we have the Alaskan Triangle. We all know about Bermuda's Devil Triangle that consumes ships and planes alike, but Alaska has their very own as well. The triangle connects from Alaska's largest city of Anchorage to Juneau in the southeast and Barrow in the north. Similar to Bermuda's Triangle, over the past 50 years, over 20,000 people and several planes have gone missing in this area. The mystery of the disappearance is inconclusive, but many of the surrounding indigenous tribes claim that restless demons and trickster spirits lure people to an icy death. Some say there's even a shape-shifting demon called the Kushtaka that inhabits the forest of the Alaskan Triangle. He is described to approach those who are lost or weak, and once your trust grows with them, they will drag you deeper and deeper into the wilderness and tear you limb for limb, preventing your soul from ever reincarnating. In other words, there's not much to do here other than being lost and potentially encountering this bloodthirsty creature. All the way at our number 1 spot with the Iliamna Lake Monster. Lake Iliamna is located in a very remote region of southwest Alaska, and when I say remote, I mean it, because in order to get to this lake, you must either go by boat or one of those float planes. It also happens to be the largest lake in Alaska and the second largest in the entire US, so best believe this large body of water has more than a few creatures lurking its depths. Native stories speak about a large aquatic creature that has been the reason for many deaths around the area. Those who have seen the beast have said it ranges from 10 to 30 feet in length with a square-like head. It's so powerful, it's said that it attacks small boats off of blunt force alone, meaning it'll ram its head onto the boat until it completely destroys it. The natives call the creature a Gonagadet, which is depicted as a fish god, or some consider the monster to be a Jig-ik-nak, which are these fish-like monsters that travel in groups to attack canoes and even kill warriors. At number 10 spot, we have the Moonville Tunnel. If you're out on a hike in the Zaleski State Forest in Ohio, you might encounter this normal looking bridge. Or so it seems. Built in 1856, this tunnel was created for a railroad to transport coal around the state. And at the time, it was the only way to go in and out of the town of Moonville. Although the tunnel served its function and is still up to this day, the one fatal flaw about it was the limited space it offered to the pedestrians walking through it. Basically, when a train would pass through the tunnel, it would give little to no space at all for people to walk through it. And you could see how this could be detrimental, considering it was the only way in and out of the town. Over the years, many unfortunate people would be struck by the train while walking through this tunnel, and many of the bodies were buried in the surrounding forest. By 1947, the town of Moonville was eventually abandoned, but this place remains a hiking spot for many. And many of the hikers claim to see former workers hanging out by the tunnel, with some claiming to hear voices when walking through this dark tunnel. At a number 9 spot, we have the Rogues Hollow. A few miles southwest of Akron is a former mining town known as Rogues Hollow, and from the name, you can see why it's Ohio's own version of the Sleepy Hollow tale. Now, like many rural areas in the state, Rogues Hollow is a perfect place to hike, eat, and see nature, but it's recommended that you do all of these during the day and not the night, because that's when everything begins to change. In 1957, a local named Russell Frey wrote about the area saying, quote, "Ghosts are best seen in the hollow on a moonlight night when there are large fleecy clouds overhead. Then the hollow fairly comes alive with the residents of the spirit world. It's said that you can see more as twilight turns to pitch blackness of the night. Then you can see nooks and crannies with shadowy forms on the move." There's so much to see here. First, you have the Headless Horseman who can be seen walking the roads and throughout the forest. Then we have the Gray Lady who walks in front of people's cars. And we also have another crybaby bridge where a woman and her child passed away, and if you turn off your engine on this bridge, you might hear the sounds of a baby crying. At a number 8 spot, we have the Minerva Monster. Ohio has been having sightings of Bigfoot for the past 75 years. So at this point, if you're walking in the woods and you see a giant ape, it wouldn't really be a surprise. But there was one case that kickstarted the Bigfoot hype all those years ago, and that is the case of the Minerva Monster. Sightings began in 1942 when locals reported an ape-like monster Monster in Minerva, Ohio, and the concern for this monster only grew when a group of teenagers randomly disappeared in the forest near the area. The case of the monster was brought up to the public's attention when local resident Hal Caden told his story of encountering the Minerva Monster. It began in August of 1978 when Caden and his friends were sitting on the back porch of their home. When they were all sitting and talking, they began to hear strange noises near the chicken coop. When they looked towards that direction, all they could find is two pairs of yellow eyes looking straight at them. When one of the friends decided to turn on their vehicle headlights, they described a creature 7 feet tall with quote-unquote black and brown matted hair that covered its entire head and face. At a number 7 spot, we have an abandoned subway. Cincinnati, Ohio actually has a subway station, and after years of construction, it never became operational, and now it just sits there under the city abandoned. Much of the reasons for its closure was due to the stock market crash in the 1920s and then the depression that hit in the 30s. The city didn't know what to do with the place, so they tried to give tours, but eventually conditions of the subway would become too dangerous for anyone to enter. Many urban explorers and paranormal investigators have found their way to the subway system, and many come back saying that this place is filled with various spirits. Some other reports include hearing footsteps in the dark and even moving shadows. Others have claimed to be chased out of these tunnels, but many think it's just homeless people. Regardless, you are not bound to have a good time if you decide to enter these abandoned tracks. At number 6 spot, we have the Ohio State Reformatory. Opening in 1890, this prison was used to house only the most dangerous criminals. This place is also known as the Mansfield Reformatory and was even labeled the most haunted location in the entire state of Ohio. Much happened at this prison back in the day, which could explain all the paranormal phenomena reported here. In the late 1930s, there was a riot in the East Cell Block which led to a number of deaths. As well, all the prisoners involved were sent to solitary confinement for a week without food or even water. And stuff like this would happen at the prison often, which would only bring more people to the brink of madness. As well, this prison housed many people passing away from influenza, tuberculosis, and one man even lit himself on fire inside of the prison.
Man, I can't hear!
So best believe this place is harsh. After closing in the 90s, many visitors and explorers have felt a noticeable chill when they walk on the grounds. The ghosts in here are apparently very touchy, and many report their clothes being tugged on. However, the most haunted location here is the Hole, which was a place where many went through solitary confinement with no food and water, and you can probably see why this is the most haunted place. In the hump of our list, we have the Walhalla Road. Located in Columbus, Ohio, is the infamous Walhalla Road. Not infamous for anything good, but for reasons that will make you avoid this road at all costs. One legend of the road goes that in the 1950s, there was once a man named Dr. Mooney who lived here alongside his wife and his children. They were living a pretty normal family life until the man decided to show more and more signs of insanity every single day. Then one day he just snapped and supposedly murdered his wife and all of his children and left them on the side of this road. Another story tells that Dr. Mooney hung himself on a tree beside this road after committing the murders. But regardless of what story you believe, what is true is that many people see his apparition in the form of a blue light on Walhalla Road. During the day, this road looks like any other road, but that all changes when nighttime hits. At number 4 spot, we have Melon Road. In Kirtland, Ohio, sometime in the 1970s, there were multiple reports of creatures with huge bald heads who would stalk this road and the woods of Northeast Ohio. Many people claim that these creatures are the product of failed government testing on humans, which they tried to hide from the public, but it seems like they didn't do a good job of hiding since they are still reported around the area. Others believe that melon heads are the products of a failed experiment from a man named Dr. Crow. It was said that Dr. Crow either made a deal with the local mental hospital or just kidnapped the patients altogether. He would do experiments on those with deformed and misshapen heads in hopes to minimize the size, but after doing multiple lobotomies, their heads would grow to extreme sizes, giving them the name melon heads. Number 3, the Twin City Opera House. In the middle of Mcconnellsville is the infamous theater known as the Twin City Opera House. It was built all the way in 1892 and serves the same purpose as it did in the beginning, which was used to be a theater and a government office. Much of the paranormal activity in this building is found in the basement, where there are multiple reports of black shadows that appear from the grounds and through the walls. Back in the 1920s, a man was murdered in the basement, which many believe that he is still in there. However, the most infamous ghost is the ghost of an usher who used to work there. He would occasionally walk up to people only to just say nothing and just stare at them. So you can imagine how awkward this encounter would be until you realized it was a ghost the whole time. At a number 2 spot, we have the Franklin Castle. Franklin Castle, designed by Haynes Tiedemann in 1881, was intended to be a dream residence for an immigrant family. but it gradually turned into a house of horrors. Over the years, this castle in Cleveland has had many countless deaths inside. So what occurred to make Franklin's Castle so haunted? It all started when the owner's 15-year-old daughter passed away from diabetes. Then soon after, the owner's mom would pass away at the home as well. Then in the span of 2 years from 1886 to 1888, Haynes Tiedemann would bury 3 more of his children around the home. After all these tragedies struck, the house was eventually sold to the German Socialist Society in the 1920s, where many people claimed it was a site of alcohol production during the Prohibition and a meeting place for German spies during World War II. Then in the 1960s, a family of 6 moved into the home with hopes of turning into a restaurant. But the moment they moved in, they would be met with countless spirits and other entities that would just tell them to leave. Nowadays, many people believe this place is haunted by the spirit of its original owner. At a number 1 spot, we have Project Blue Book. So since Ohio is Ohio, best believe they have their own Area 51. Specifically known as Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, this place would be the spot where the United States Air Force conducted official studies of UFOs. This project would be known as Project Blue Book, and it began in July of 1947 after the infamous UFO crash in Roswell, New Mexico. Many people even believe that parts of that crash were taken to this airbase to be studied by government scientists. The project would end up shutting operations in 1969, but much of the place still remains a mystery. If you didn't believe me on any of these points, just listen to one of the majors talking about it.
Major Quintanilla, what are the objectives of Project Blue Book?
The objectives of the program are twofold. They're the same as they have been since 1953 when the regulations were given. First of all, to try to determine if the UFO phenomena presents a threat to the security of the United States. And second, to determine if the UFO phenomena exhibits any technological advances which could be turned into research and development.
Well, these are the top 10 Ohio Scary Urban Legends Part 2. What do you guys think about this list? Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, but don't forget to like and subscribe to this video for some more content. I'm your host Andrew, and I hope you guys have a scary day.